So I'll put this question to Jason Ditz with us from Michigan. Jason, as I said, one major general has been saying that Muammar Gaddafi, suggesting that he's now lost his credibility even within his own government and within his own military officials by threatening his own people with militia force and rather using militia force against them.
I think that's definitely true. He's lost a large number of his military leaders. He's lost his members of his cabinet. We've had people defecting in warplanes to Malta, and I think it's pretty clear that he's on his last legs here, and about the only people whose loyalty he can count on are the mercenaries.
Yeah, and according to one official from the government, a former official speaking to some media, he was saying that Muammar Gaddafi could go to an extent of using even chemical weapons against his own people if he has to. Do you think that that's the extent that he's prepared to go to quell these protests? Will he do that?
Well, I certainly hope he doesn't go that far. It seems like his ability to attack, especially in the eastern part of the country, has been significantly degraded. We're not seeing major reports of attacks in Benghazi or places like that anymore. I would say his ability to launch such attacks has become pretty limited, except for around Tripoli. And I would certainly hope that, to the extent that he still has the capability to launch attacks like that, he wouldn't go that far.
Right, let's go back to Alan now, who's with us from California. Alan, the thing is, how long do you think Gaddafi can go on with this approach that he's been taking? Do you think that he has the means or the support among his own people to go ahead with this kind of crackdown against the anti-government protesters?
I don't think he's got much time at all. His own Air Force pilots are bailing out. You've got to look at this whole thing. You've got to look at the perspective of what's happening over there. 2/3 of the world's known oil reserves are in the Middle East and North Africa. And we're talking, the State Department is saying things like, we care about peace, democracy, human rights, and freedom of speech, and expressing alarm and disapproval of the incidents of violence. But a quick review of our policy in the region reveals that the government has never had an interest in peace, democracy, or universal rights. We don't care about the Arab masses. All we care about is U.S. political and economic control. That's what's happening over there. And so we're losing control, which is making Obama very nervous, and the Western nations very nervous, and Tony Blair, who's saying we have to maintain our way of life, very nervous.
Right,
so
I'll just come to that, Alan, about what you said, really the concerns of...
The rest of the,
yeah.
Go ahead.
I'll just come back to the concerns of the United States, but just before we move on, I want to ask Jason, the fact that Muammar Gaddafi has said that Al-Qaeda is to blame for all this, why do you think he's making that kind of comment? What does he mean by that?
Well, I think he's just completely desperate at this point. First it was the Italians that were behind it, then it was the British and the United States were behind it. He's come up with things about people slipping hallucinogenic drugs in Nescafe coffee to trick all these people into protesting, and now Al-Qaeda is just his latest excuse. He's trying to come up with some rationale. I don't know if he truly believes that this is the case and that he just can't fathom why people are rebelling, but it seems pretty clear that he's just grasping for straws at this point.
Yeah, Alan, you were speaking. I'd like to have your view on this as well. Blaming Al-Qaeda for, he said, drugging youth in Libya to make these acts. What do you think?
Were you talking to me, Alan?
Yeah, Alan, go ahead.
Okay. This is the last ploy of a desperate man. He's in total denial. The bubble is closing in on him. He'll blame anyone. And his last-ditch thing might be to blow up the oil fields, but this is a very desperate man, willing to blame anyone before he finally crashes and burns.
Yeah, well, we were speaking about the United States' role in the middle of this, and of course the West in general. Now, we know that Barack Obama has called the leaders of France, Britain and Italy. They've been speaking about this, meetings being held, of course, and the latest that we're hearing from the United States official is that they're pondering economic sanctions and, in their words, other multilateral measures. Do you think that we should have been hearing, and we still haven't, comments like the democratic process in Libya, the humanitarian situation in Libya, and what should be done about that, and we're not hearing that?
We're not hearing that because that's not part of our thing. Every time we mention that, it's a lie. We don't care about the people. All we care about is maintaining political and economic control. That's what we're all about. So let me put it this way. The revolt in the Arab world, this is so big, it's unbelievable. And it's not merely against a resident dictator like Gaddafi, but it's against a worldwide economic tyranny designed by, guess who? The U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, the Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank, which have ensured that rich countries like Egypt are reduced to vast sweatshops, and half the population is earning less than $2 a day. So the People's Triumph in Cairo was the first blow against what Benito Mussolini called corporatism, or I would call it corpocracy, a word that appears in the definition of fascism. This is big. And so all our happy talk, Obama's happy talk, is a classic straddle. Basically, we're scared to death that we're going to lose the oil, but make it really simple. And we're scared to death. We're scared to death of what we created, and we created Gaddafi. Remember Tony Blair's famous trip over there in 2004, where he said Gaddafi's our friend, and shipped him millions and millions of weapons, billions of dollars of weapons, which are now being used against the people. This is the classic hypocrisy of Western imperialism.
Well, yes, and we know, Jason did, that Libyan ruler Muammar Gaddafi had tried to become more allied towards the United States, for instance, by, he said, scrapping his nuclear program. And we, of course, as Alan was saying, know of the relations between Britain and the Libyan government. So a lot of the media have been describing this as, quote, an embarrassing situation for these governments because of their relations. The fact that showing that they've sacrificed principles for their own interests.
Well, that's right, and I think that's pretty much par for the course for a lot of them. But realistically, when you're talking about countries like Libya, I think the most positive aspect is that the U.S. has been so late to the game in commenting at all on this. It's been very much behind the curve on places like Egypt and Libya, assuming that these dictators are going to crush the protests and it's going to get back to the status quo in short order. And now that they're talking about sanctions and things like that, it's so far past after the fact. It seems like the Libyan government could be falling in a matter of days here, and they're talking about imposing sanctions as though that's going to have some sort of impact on a government that's on this last legs anyway.
Yeah, Alan, just something that Jason just said there. He said that the fact that the United States is delaying its commenting on what's happening, the same we were seeing, of course, in Egypt, as you may recall, and now in Libya, a delay in condemnations that we may be expecting from the likes of the United States to make, and we're not hearing. Alan, do you think that it is because, as Jason said, the fact that the United States thinks that these regimes could crush the protests before, of course, things develop into violence and before the ouster of that regime becomes clear?
Absolutely true. Obama was busily getting ready for his re-election bid, and this caught him by surprise, like a deer in the headlights. And so your previous speaker was absolutely correct. Now we're trying to recover our ground here because basically things are out of control. So it's saying all the right words, but we don't know what we're doing because the events are overtaking us. It's like a big tidal wave is building. And quite honestly, it's happening here in the United States too. We're having big protests in several cities in the United States as we speak, and particularly this weekend. People are being empowered by this. So the people have been put down in the press. Once the people sense, when Mubarak left, the people sensed this was their chance. And they're taking the bit. They're taking the bit in their mouth and they're going for it. His days are numbered. I would expect Gaddafi to last, as I said on your previous broadcast 2 days ago, he should be gone by the end of the week. And everything is up in the air, which is exactly what it should be. Everything is going to be up in the air in the Middle East. This is how true revolutions start. Everything's up in the air, chaos. Everyone's trying to find their ground, and it's never painless. It's always confusing. But the people will win out.
Of course, it does come at a high cost. Of course, the numbers that we're hearing of those people who've been killed or injured in Libya is beyond believable. Jason, the fact that Western powers are now considering economic sanctions as, of course, their latest option to deal with this, do you think that it's even effective, for instance, talking of economic sanctions at this time?
No, I definitely don't think it would be effective at all. And once again, it's very much after the fact. Most of the violence is probably over in Libya outside of the immediate area around Tripoli. The government has lost control of most of the nation. Your map showed all these cities that have fallen to the protesters. There's just not that much left to sanction. You'd basically be sanctioning a bunch of protester-controlled cities after the fact, after Gaddafi has already lost control of those cities. And by the time those sanctions get through the United Nations, he's probably going to be out of office anyway. So then you're going to have to repeal the sanctions because he's already gone.
Okay, Jason Ditz, managing editor of antiwar.com, joining us there on the line from Michigan. Thanks very much for being with us, Jason. Also, Alan Rowland, online columnist, joining us on the line from California. Thanks, gentlemen, for staying with us and sharing your thoughts.